Hi, everybody. I'm Kris Bakke with Nasco Education, and you have been asking if we could do some printmaking stuff. And I would be completely lying if I said I designed this whole thing around that request, but half of it I did. The first half, we're going to talk a little bit about this lesson plan called Amazing Blueprints. And that was the happy accident, as our friend Bob Ross would call it. But the second half was absolutely planned. And that is our guest today, who is Tasha Newton, elementary art teacher from Fall Creek, Wisconsin, and an overall beautiful human being. And I know I say that about everybody, but there's so many of you that are just so awesome, and I get so excited. And so that's why I wore my joy shirt today, because Tasha Newton just brings everybody joy. She's often known under her like Twitter name and Instagram name, I Art My Job, which is so perfect. So welcome, Tasha, and I am super pleased to have you here today. We have known each other for quite a long time now. I met you when you were the Youth Art Month coordinator, and that was, you set the Madison Capitol on fire, you and Sarah Krajewski that year, with all kinds of excitement. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kris, so much for having me. I'm really excited to share this new process that I've kind of stumbled upon. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today, and I hope everyone enjoys the process.
Oh, absolutely. And the really fun part about this is you learned about this artist from another art teacher. And then from there, you sort of created a process. But let me just tell you something, everybody. She not only like created the process and did it with her students, she then recreated it a little bit just for today. So that's why you are definitely going to want to get to know Tasha. And I'm going to come back to you. I'll give you a second to get flipped into demo mode. First, I want to talk a little bit about the amazing blueprints. This is a lesson plan that we have had for, oh my gosh, this is volume 72. So it has been around for a long time. We have hundreds of these. Noelle Burns, who is also a Wisconsin art ed teacher that I love so much, created this. And honestly, I kept going into her classroom and I would always feel like, did you get some art from like the middle school or high school? And she'd be like, Kris, those are my kids' art. This was called Amazing Blueprints. Excuse me. So we have a short video that goes through the project guide. And what the project guide is a student version that sort of just breaks down the steps and helps the student, particularly in a distance learning situation. The lesson plans can be found on both nascoeducation.com and our K to Career Resource Center called Nasco Educate. And the project guides are absolutely in Nasco Educate. So if you need an account for Nasco Educate, please let us know. It takes about 24 hours to set you up with a username and password, but so many great resources there. So watch the video, and you can even try to play along a little bit. It's both of these probably have more steps than we can actually take you through on sort of a make and take, but I think you're going to definitely come away with two great ideas, particularly for distance learning too. So enjoy. Hi, I'm Kris Bakke with Nasco Education. NASCO has over 100 NASCO Artworks lesson plans available on NASCO Education and our K to Career Resource Center, NASCO Educate. We're excited because in the evolving student learning, we have created individual one-sheets for quite a few of these lesson plans. These are developed so that teachers can assign them to students, or a student can go online and get them, or a parent do it as a family. Today I want to talk a little bit about amazing blueprints. It was pretty fun. I'm not an awesome artist, and so I chose a butterfly. You're going to pick an animal or a bird or an insect, and you're going to draw it. I would add in that you can also study about it too. You can make this a STEAM or a STEM lesson plan with where does the animal live, what do they eat, but you're going to start with a sketch. And once you get the sketch to where you want it, and it makes pretty simplistic lines, then you're going to cut it out. And the idea is you're going to cut it out so that you're going to be able to trace this onto the construction paper. I'm going to give you a quick hack that's not on the lesson plans, is I took mine and used a Sharpie marker to accentuate the lines, and then I took my pencil and I filled in the back just, with the lead, so that when I put it on the paper, I'm going to press really hard and make a copy on there. The lesson plan just suggests to press hard to make a dent in the paper, but I was a little bit unsure. I wanted to see my line, but I wanted it to be a little bit soft. So I put it on there, pressed really hard, and then created the indent. And then from there, I put the glue on and traced it with glue. You're going to have to be a little bit careful in terms of not squeezing the glue, because you're going to get globs. If you put the tip of the glue onto the paper, sometimes it doesn't leave sort of that raised edge. So you just have to be very gentle and go over the best that you can, and then gently set it aside and let it dry for 24 hours. From there, you're going to use some oil pastels and start filling it in and coloring. You can actually do the glue like print on the back for your background. I chose not to because I felt like it helped make the butterfly pop out. But here's the start of filling it in, and then your beautiful butterfly. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the fact that you can blend watercolors, and so there was a couple greens in there, and the white made the blue give it some different shades and some hues. And so we just want you to take these lesson plans, enjoy them at home, use them with your students, and be creative. I'm not going to lie, that one was kind of hard for me. It is grades 3 through 8. So I kind of now know what my range is, but you can see it in the background there. Next to that is tomorrow's lesson plan, so I'm just trying to tease you up a little bit. But Tasha, are you about ready for us?
I sure am.
All right, well, I'm going to switch it over to Tasha, and she is going to wow you with another printmaking lesson plan.
Thanks, Kris. All right, so today I'm going to show you a pretty fun, simple, easy way to do a printmaking process, and this can be done at home or in your classroom. So I have a couple of different varieties of supplies for you, and I'm going to apologize in advance. I am about 25 weeks pregnant, so I've noticed in a lot of my videos, my tummy will kind of accidentally get into the bottom of the screen. So if that happens, I apologize. I have no spatial awareness right now in regards to that. So, but today we're going to be doing similar to this. I'm going to show you a variety of ways you can do that. When I originally started this lesson, I did it with 4th grade, and we looked at an artist named Aaron Droplin, and he's a phenomenal designer, and I got his name from the fabulous art teacher Don Moss. And we did a printmaking process on top of a logo that they developed that represents themselves. So it was a really fun collaging and then printmaking on top process. If you want to check that lesson out, you can definitely do that. It is on my website, and my website is just iartmyjob.com. So feel free to check that out too if you want to see another take on this process. So this is kind of what I'll show you to do today, what we're going to do today. I have experimented with a lot of different ways to do it. So here's a fun one with just some colored markers. Here's what it would look like if you use paint. So what I'm using today is I have 2 different types of paper because I wanted to show you that you can use an extremely lightweight computer paper, but also I have like a 90-pound heavier paper as well. I also have Nasco's texture plates, and I have been slowly collecting these throughout the years. So I have almost like every set of them, and I love them and adore them. But if you don't have these at home or in your classroom, another fun way to do this is have your students do a texture scavenger hunt. And that can be done in your classroom, or you can have them do that at home, which is super fun. So I kind of ran around my house real quick. I found some fun string. Oops, sorry about that. This is just like one of those cabinet under rug, don't fall when you're running around things. And then burlap. And I also like to use like strange surfaces like baskets, things like that. So if I were teaching this virtually, like if I have to go in next year and teach it virtually again, I would definitely do this and have my kids find like 4 textures within their house, a bumpy one, a smooth one, a rough one, kind of like that. So you're gonna need some textures. And then I also have my personal favorite. These are the Jack Richardson semi-moist tempera cakes. And we're gonna layer that on top of those textures. I am using some color sticks, but feel free to use crayons. They do the same thing. I just didn't want to take the time to peel the crayons, so that was my easy, lazy way to get out of that. And then we're going to be using some washable markers today. The washable markers are what we're going to use to actually print onto the surface. And so I have these Crayola Super Tip markers, but I also tried it with a couple different, because you know how you try something and it works super well with one product, and then you try a similar product but a different name and it doesn't work at all. So I also tried it with these the Mr. Sketch scented markers. Works totally fine with that as well. So in addition to that supplies, we're going for the printmaking process. You're going to use the washable markers, and you can use either a transparency, or another slick, easy peasy way to do this is with your very own just freezer gallon size Ziploc bag right here. So either way, you can see how this can transition to your virtually doing this easily at home, or doing it really fun in your classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of my textures here and do some texture rubbings. And I always do a texture scavenger hunt with my kindergartners. I would probably do this lesson with either my 4th or 5th graders. I think you could be successful in 3rd grade with this lesson, but I noticed this was a art teacher boo-boo for me, because I'm like, oh, I do textures in kindergarten and 1st grade. Like, they totally know textures and can identify them and recreate them in their artwork. And then you get them in 5th grade again, right? And they're like, what do you mean textures? What are you even talking about textures? So I think this would be a fun way to kind of bring that back and kind of do a nice review of textures. So another way you could do this too is you could have the kids do a texture scavenger hunt for like the first 10 minutes of class, and then have these fun texture rubbings at their table, so they have maybe a little bit more successful of a texture on theirs. Because some of the times when you're doing that texture scavenger hunt, you'll get on those softer surfaces, and those don't always tend to show up as well. So again, this is on the 90-pound paper, and I'm going to do my found objects over here on my super duper thin computer paper. And I'm just using those Crayola color sticks. Always super fun to have around. But again, just a simple crayon can do the job as well. This is my new favorite found texture. I just like to found some string and laid it down and then rubbed on top of it. I was very satisfied with the results. I love doing this texture scavenger hunt with my kindergarten students in my classroom, but you definitely have to set some ground rules for sure. Like, don't color on the actual wall. That was learned very quickly. So I just went along with both of these and added those textures. And then I'm just going to go ahead with some of the Jack Richardson semi-moist tempera cakes red on top. One of my tricks for using either like if you're using tempera cakes or watercolor, one thing I learned from a watercolor artist when I was young many years ago is that you can always have two containers. One container, it will be your clean container, and the other one will be your messy container. So if you want, you could definitely incorporate this with your older kids to kind of get them to think about keeping their water clean, so it'll keep your paints a little bit nicer. You could also have fun with different color schemes or like reviewing different colors. You could do maybe like secondary colored colors for your textures and then do primary colors on top of that. You could even teach a couple different watercolor techniques with this, like a wet on wet, or you could do a dry on wet and you could put some salt on there. You could even put some saran wrap over it to get it some fun different textures. So there's a lot of variety with this as well. So this is what I'm just doing really quick for my background. I'm going to cover that with some paint. And then we're going to print on top of it. And another thing I love about this too is that it does dry pretty quick. So you can easily have the kids do 2 of these at once. And by the time they're done with their second one, their first one could be dry and they could print on it right away. So if I was doing this in my classroom, I teach every 3 days and to my students, which is amazing. And I'm very lucky and blessed to be able to do that. But I would say this would be probably a 2-day lesson, unless you want the students to photograph take their own photographs and do all that. You might want that to be a fun 1-day lesson as well and really kind of go over the elements of photography as well. All right, so I have my background ready to rock and roll. You could do a little splatters on top, because what kid doesn't like to do that, right? All right, so I'm going to set that to the side to dry. I did make a couple ones that were finished yesterday. So this is what your background could look like. This was what I used. This is a heavier paper with the traditional texture plates from Nasco. And then this one was the one with the scavenger hunt. So you can still see, you can get some really fun textures in there with just items you find around the house as well. So now is the fun part where we get to print. So I'm going to be printing using some family pictures of my son. So this, they could even just take pictures out of frames and use it, or they could use magazine pictures, or you could have them photograph, maybe you're working with still lifes. You could have them photograph a really interesting composition they find within a still life and kind of print that. So I just have some fun family pictures of my son here that I'm going to be using to print today. And then I'm going to be using, I think I'll start with the black so you can kind of see what that looks like. And I will start with the transparency too, so you can kind of see how I did that. So when I first started this project, I had students painting. And so you could totally do that technique too. The thing that they will struggle with, and my students really struggled with, is the fact that they couldn't control they couldn't as easily control the amount of paint that was on their brush. So they would get blobs here and there, which I found to be beautiful, but was a little bit frustrating for them. So then I was trying to think of a way that would control that or solve that issue. And that's when I was like, well, why not like washable markers, right? That should solve the issue. So that's when I decided to try that. Actually, I tried that, what was it, Sunday night, to see if it would work. And I'm like, yay, it works. So I think if I were to do this again, I would definitely have my students use the washable markers, but this would be fun for you to experiment too as your own personal artist if you want to try it out. So I have my picture underneath, and then I'm going to put my transparency on top, and I'm going to tape it. So I had my students tape these together, and then I had my students take their piece of paper. Let's see if I can find a clean one. So I'll just print it on white so you can just see that process and tape that on as well. So we have 3 things taped together here. We have the picture, the transparency, and your paper. And then I'm going to go ahead with my black marker, and this is where you're going to have some fun. You can introduce the continuous line idea. And when I did this with my 4th graders as just a fun virtual project, I introduced 2 different artists to them. I introduced them to Picasso, so a really historical, well-known artist, but then I also introduced them to a more contemporary artist, and that contemporary artist is Different, or DFT, differently on Instagram, or DFT on Instagram. And he does some beautiful continuous line work. I highly recommend checking his work out. And he also has some really fun videos that you could show your students as well. So that's what I would definitely introduce my students to when I do teach this next year, hopefully in my classroom, maybe virtually, we'll see. So when I was demonstrating how to do a continuous line drawing, I told them once they put their marker to the paper, or in our case, our transparency, it can't be lifted up. Once it's lifted up, you have to be done. So I always like to start with his hair because it's just so fun. And again, you can really do this with any object. You could have students just like choose their favorite object, or maybe they want to choose someone they look up to, maybe like an athlete or an actor. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a self-portrait or a person either. So lots of different variety you can do with this. So when I have students coming into the face, I always have them try to reach in from things that are reaching the furthest out. So example, the eyebrow, I could reach in from the eyebrow, go into the eye, go around the eye, come back, go around the nose, and come back over here, boop, boop, boop. And then I'm gonna go over to the mouth from over here, just so then you don't have, you know, those lines going all the way across your paper, which you never really think you have to say that stuff until you have kids doing it, and then you're like, oh yeah, I should have clarified that a little bit. All right, so then I'm gonna go from his hair to his eyebrow over here. And you can, what I love about this too is you can really start to see the students' kind of personal style and just their mark making technique, which is super fun. All right, so I have my continuous line drawing on top of my image here. What I'm gonna do now is, in my classroom, I usually will have like a container with a sponge in it, and just the sponge is slightly dampened. So you could either do a sponge, a washcloth, or a spray bottle, and have them mist the surface that they're going to print the image onto, okay? Here's my trick for this, because the struggle with this is you either have enough or too much or too little of water. What I tell my students is, if your surface of your paper is shiny, that's too much. If it's not shiny and it's slightly dampened, that's perfect. When you touch it and it's not damp at all, then it's not enough and it's not going to pick up your image. So that's what I tell my students, and they've been pretty successful. I do a similar technique with my 2nd graders, and after a couple prints, they always seem to find success. So if it's a little too wet, I have them either take a towel, paper towel, kind of wipe it a little bit. Also, you want to make sure it's a nice even across your piece of paper. So again, not shiny, but damp to the touch. And then I'm just going to take this and print it. So the nice thing about being able to tape it is, if I wanted to, I could always go back and rework an area or re-wet in an area if I wasn't successful in getting it wet enough. Just giving it a little massage. Another way you could do this and kind of incorporate it into maybe like a drawing lesson if you teach high school is, let's see how this beauty turned out. Oh yeah, look at that jazz. So this is what the print would look like on top. So now I'm gonna go ahead, tear this baby off of here, and let's try it again with one of our fun pieces of paper, right? How's everyone doing out there? Kris, are you doing okay?
I am doing great. You may want to move up a little tiny bit. We weren't catching completely the bottom, but I think your position is perfect now.
Is that good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm going ahead and doing the same thing. Now I have that fun colored paper, right? This is where you could even go with a different color. Maybe you want to talk about complementary colors, do a complementary colors for the like a blue in the background, and then you're going to print it onto orange or something, right? Lots of different ways you can really incorporate what your curriculum is focusing on too. So let's see, what do I want to do? I think I'll do the black again. So again, this is going to be the same technique if you're putting it in a Ziploc bag as well. And I'll show you what that kind of looks like too. So the fun thing about this is you could even give students a time limit, like they can only have their pen or their marker down for 15 seconds and they have to complete it in that time. I think it's a really great way to kind of get kids to loosen up. I think we as artists in general struggle with, you know, we have that image in our head and then we just get really frustrated when we can't execute that image properly on paper. I know that's one of my struggles my students really have, is just kind of letting go and just enjoying the mark making, enjoying the process. So you could, this I think really helps with that kind of, that struggle. So one thing you could do is you could start, and this is maybe I would do with older kids, with having them do a continuous line on top of your image, then have them do another one where maybe they're just looking at the image, but there's nothing behind it, right? And then their third one could be that they are doing it completely from memory. This idea I got from a book actually that I just finished reading, and I highly, highly recommend it. This is called How to Be an Artist by Jerry Saltz. And it has just, each chapter is just different aspects about being an artist, but it also has some really amazing different strategies and drawing techniques to try out. So highly recommend that book. And that's where I got the idea of this would be a fun way to kind of do the process of really finding your mark making technique, right? Because right now I'm just really looking at my object, trying to recreate it. And then if I were to look at it and draw it over here, I still am really trying to recreate what I'm seeing. But if I'm doing it from memory, that's really all me. So that would be kind of a fun way to incorporate that into a drawing class if you are a drawing teacher. All right, so again, I'm just wetting. I'm avoiding it being shiny. Wiping it away and crossing my fingers, right? Every time. All right, here we go. And there's that magic when you get to lift it up, right? Those oohs and those ahs that those kids do when they lift up their prints. It's always my favorite part. Probably why I do so much printmaking in my classroom. All right, so this one, you can see it wasn't as dark. So what I might want to do, because I did tape it and almost kind of created that registry for it, we'll try just getting it wet again. And redoing that. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. So that's just, I love how it's kind of this ghostly image laying on top of all these bright colors. But then there's so many different ways you can take this, okay? So here I was playing with this last night and I was like, well, what if I just did like a bunch of colors? So then, because you know, markers have the ability to be in so many different colors. So this I did with just a bunch of different colors on white, definitely getting that Andy Warhol vibe. I don't know about you guys. So you could incorporate a really fun Andy Warhol lesson. So let's just demo really quickly inside the bag so you can see what that looks like. Let me find that other ridiculous picture of my son. Memorial Day, snapped this baby of him. So I just slide that right into the Ziploc. The only thing I've struggled with is kind of creating a nice register to, if I need to print again, I can with this system. But otherwise, I found it to be pretty successful. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use just a smaller piece of paper too, using the Mr. Sketch watercolor markers. But now I'm going to go ahead and use the super tip, and you guys can see that it works just as well too. Let's go with some cool colors on this one. So if you want, you can also tape your image in here so it's not sliding around. Even you might even want to tape your bag down so it's not sliding around. I definitely recommend doing multiple prints because I feel like after each one, you kind of get this system down and this movement, which is kind of fun as an artist, and you kind of have a rhythm with your mark making. It'd be kind of fun to see the kids kind of start to experiment with that. But I could totally see kids loving that. They can just take a picture from a picture frame sitting next to them, plop it in a Ziploc, make a really cool image of that, and it's so personal as well. So I think that's why this could be such a really successful virtual lesson as well. And then you always have that moment when you accidentally forget like their nose or something. It's never fun. All right, so we'll see how this one turns out. I'm gonna go ahead, let's see, I'll tape it here. Give her a little spritz. We don't want it shiny, we just want it damp. And let's see how this baby turns out. I like that color a lot. I also think this would be fun to do on postcards, and you could send some happy mail. I know Kris has been doing that with another art teacher, and I think this would be a fun technique as well. I mean, the possibilities are limitless, I feel like, with this technique, but I really do like the idea of that quick continuous line drawing underneath. Originally, I was thinking that because I was still stuck with the paint idea. Ooh, look at that beauty. So then I'm gonna go over and I can create a bunch of them on top of each other and have them be maybe a nice gradation of color, or really however I want. Let's see, what do I want? Purple, let's try. So I think this is a little bit different than what a lot of people might think of maybe when they think of a continuous line. I know sometimes you're really working on creating the simplicity of that continuous line instead of more just that playful mark making. But I think there's beauty in both of these. So you can also, you know, have the kids practice more with clean line mark making and really focusing on less is more with your lines too. Let's see. I think I got all of it. So again, you can see this is a little bit finer line, and then I did the Mr. Sketch. We'll try, and you'll see it's a little bit thicker line. So you can experiment that way as well too.
I am absolutely loving the fact that you are using a sandwich bag right now. Like,
Right?
like you're probably using a size larger than sandwich, but what an amazing hack, because with any luck, everybody has a marker and a plastic bag.
That's what I'm thinking. And look at that. Look how fun that is. Voila. So you
Hey,
could even,
Tasha, one of the questions says, when you respray, do you have trouble with the original print smudging?
again, if I just really focus, so you can have that smudging if your registry is a little off and you laid it down a little funky. But if you do a nice job of just going straight back and straight down and have that process, then I think you're a little bit successful. The only way it's smudgy, like you can see it's getting a little smudgy right here, is because somebody, I'm not going to point any fingers, didn't double check to make sure it wasn't shiny and it was just damp. So I should have just wiped it a little bit there. But I kind of find beauty in that as well, like where it's blending a little bit. And I think this is a really good process where kids need to kind of just let it go and see what the materials do, and see the materials kind of take away their process, you know. And it's more about the process and not necessarily the outcome, but then there's so much beauty in the finished product as well.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal looking.
So I have, let's see, this one here. Where did I put that? I was gonna print it on to that super cheap computer paper for you guys so you can see that I'm gonna be actually getting this wet again and printing it again, and you can still have success with it, just that cheap computer paper that hopefully most kids would have at home. Crossing your fingers that they would have it at home.
Right. And sometimes in terms of even that, like if you get some mail, like some junk mail and
Yes.
somebody sends you, and what comes to my mind is like our church bulletin, like a
Yeah.
letter from your church that's like, hey, this is what's happening, and the back is blank. There's a piece of paper for you.
Right, exactly. And you can even take out, if you get like a bill and it has that little window, you could take that material out and also use that to print with. It would just be, a smaller format.
That I think has become probably the most amazing thing in distance learning is the creativity that is happening out there on how to make things, how to use things that you have. It's like art teachers, I have said over and over and over again, the 4 C's, communication, collaboration, but critical thinking and creativity at its finest. And the collaboration part is exactly this, Tasha, is the sharing of these kind of hacks and tips and things like that. So this is so awesome. Keep going. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I love it. No, I totally agree. I think that's kind of like invigorating for me as an art teacher to have these additional challenges. Like, okay, so I did this successfully in my classroom, but wait a minute, what happens if I have to take it out of my classroom now and try to see what I have around my house to kind of recreate that? So I think that's been a fun new challenge for me as an art teacher, actually. But it's also been fun to see the kids take on that challenge as well and see kind of what they've come up with at home. I've been doing, all right, here we go. We're going to print this on that cheap computer paper and see what happens. I've been doing weekly making it at home challenges for my kids, so it's not required, but if they want some additional art making, they can do it. And it's like, what can you make with a toilet paper roll? What kind of sculpture can you make with things you have at home? So that's also been very fun. So I'll just show you this real quick. I made this sculpture with just cardboard.
Love.
Right? Isn't that super fun? And my son was just finishing up 4K, we did just a review of shapes. He drew them on cardboard, colored them in, cut them out, and he made his own little sculpture.
So cute. Tasha, what kind of spray bottle are you using? And is it giving you a little bit of a hard time? Or is it just because it's running out of water?
This is I have no idea where I got this. It's probably for my plants that I originally used it for, but I think it's okay. It's probably just that I'm not paying attention enough and spraying nicely enough, but this turned out pretty nice too, though.
I know spray bottles can go all over the board in terms of,
Yeah.
there's some super fancy ones out there, but there's also a lot that you can get, pretty darn inexpensive.
Yeah, and again, when I do this in my classroom, this summer like process where you have to wet in the paper, I have my kids use those super cheap sponges from the dollar store. So so this I'm just using at home because I don't have a sponge that hasn't been grossly used to wash dishes. so I'm using this, but or you can even use those sponges that are dried out and you just cut up and then just have them dampen those sponges a little bit, have them wipe that across the surface of the paper, and that works just as well. Probably better than the spray because you know how kids get with a spray bottle. It's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game. But they love it.
So true.
So that's that one.
Another question is, if you wanted to actually mail this out, how would you create this? How would you make this permanent?
That's the struggle I've been thinking of with this. So I did kind of and maybe I'll try that with you guys real quick to see. one of the things you could try to do, let's see if we can make it happen, is I was kind of wondering, what if you drew fast enough with your continuous line drawing with a Sharpie that it was still wet and printed it, would that work? So let's try. Because I was also thinking, like, what if you wanted to color on it afterwards, right? Instead of before, where with a washable marker, it's going to just bleed everywhere. But you could also just spray a sealer over it too. That would work, or even a Mod Podge over the top. Just
Yeah,
have to
I'm a huge Mod Podger. You know, sometimes it changes the look a little bit, but there's a matte and there's a gloss.
Yes.
But it does absolutely like seal and protect.
Yeah.
In the handouts, so you should have like a little side panel that has a handout button. And if you click on the handouts, there's a Word document that's actually, it just says crayons or Crayola art sticks. That's just, I didn't even have time to title it. Tasha and I were kind of scurrying at the last minute, throwing the handout on there. But if you click on there, the whole handout should come up, and it is a list of materials that she has been sharing, but also too, it will have her Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I threw her Etsy out there because, you know, art people like to buy stuff from art people, so we're all good with that.
Sharpie was unsuccessful.
One of the questions, somebody wondered if you did Sharpie and then tap on or do maybe like a spritz or the sponge with rubbing alcohol, if it would work.
Yes,
I don't know.
that's
That
also what I was thinking. Yeah, I was also thinking that.
When you got a plastic bag and you're making at home, I'm all for trying those kinds of things. I tried acrylic paint and on a Duralar, and that didn't really work very good. The acrylic paint dried a little bit too fast on the plastic. I was kind of surprised about that, but I didn't actually, I might have just did it too lightly or something.
Right. Another thing is I had a local artist come in, and this might be a super fun way to add a little bit of shimmer on top of this. She takes a little bit of this gold paint from that Golden art company, but I tried it with just the Sargent Art liquid watercolor, the gold, and mixed that with a little bit of Mod Podge. I actually put that in like a cheap spray bottle and sprayed that on top of some of my second graders created these really fun mixed media portraits, sprayed that on top, and it made this really kind of rustic, beautiful finish, shimmery finish on top of it. And that I think would be a great addition to this.
And that was a little bit of the Sargent Art metallic watercolor.
Correct. Liquid watercolor.
And a little bit of Mod Podge.
Yep. And I might have put a little bit of water in there. It was very experimental. Gotcha. But again, you could do that
eventually your sprayer got clogged up.
Yeah, that's why I went with a cheapie, because I was like, I'm definitely not going to be using this when I'm done. But you know what? I think I actually did rinse that out just recently and tried putting water back into it, and I think it worked fine. So perfect. Yeah, I mean, there's that too. But you can also just put it in a container and brush that on as well, which is what I did the previous year. And it just really creates kind of this rustic old, doesn't distort the image at all. It just adds a little bit of oomph on top of it. Almost like if you were to put like a yellow filter on a photograph, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready? Are you ready to come on back on? Because I'd love to see your face again, but if you're still showing stuff, I don't want to take away from that.
I'm trying to think if there was any other techniques I wanted to show you, but I can't. I'll just show you this real quick. This was one I did with the paint, and then I did multiple images on top, and you can kind of see how you get those, bigger splotches, because you can't control as much, control the amount of paint that goes onto your Ziploc or your transparency. So again, washable marker, paint, both of them, really different looks, but really fun, quick techniques too. All right, so we are gonna flip back around, right?
Yes.
Okay. See how smooth I can do this for you all.
That is no, while you're getting all situated, I gotta tell you, like, honestly, you guys, Tasha is kind of like a printmaking queen, or maybe a princess. Printmaking princess sounds way more fun. But I've been in some sessions at the Wisconsin Art Ad Conference where she's done little stations of different printmaking. And so I'm contemplating bringing her back as a guest for Maker Mondays and do maybe like a printmaking extravaganza in 30 minutes or less, because she is real good. So I can't put her on the spot while she's right on TV, because that is, or on your computer, because that would not be fair. Sometimes I like to pretend I'm on TV. That's why I said that, because this is kind of like Kris's, TV show. Just, it's how I live. It's that whole creativity in me. And I know that I'm an elementary student, because when you said, oh yeah, and you can do splatters, because the kiddos love the splatters. I'm like, I love the splatters. If there's other, um, yes, would this be considered a type of monoprint?
Yeah, it would definitely be, because every time you do it, it's going to be a little different. So I would personally call it a monoprint for sure.
Yes. So Christy and Claudia and Kimberly and Ashley, who's all asking questions, like, thank you so much for participating, and you're asking great questions. What kind of paper? You used a 90-pound. Was it the multimedia?
Yep.
Yeah. So I will brag a little bit on Nasco's multimedia paper. It is, the 90-pound is, I think it's 90-pound, 80-pound or 90-pound is strong enough that if you really saturate it with water, it will hold up. If you truly want to do a watercolor art project, then I would suggest using watercolors. But when you're doing practicing, and when you're learning at an elementary level and you're going through tons and tons of paper, that multimedia paper is really a really big bang for the buck.
And
great question.
Yeah, and I found too, like I use that multimedia when I'm painting. If it's a quick painting like this, I'm not going back and reworking on top of it. So I don't necessarily have to worry about those fibers getting pulled apart and kind of creating that icky junk on top of it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I definitely am all about the 98-pound paper. It's where it's at.
Do you miss the paper if you're using paint? Excuse me.
Nope. Then that was also the struggle, is I do not missed it. So the kids will have to like paint a section. When I did this, as if they were just trying to create the portrait, right? They would paint a section and then they would print that, lift it up. And this is when they had to be really good about maintaining the straight up and down with their folding, because otherwise you'd get that blurred image. So they would just print it one part at a time.
Awesome.
So no wetness with that one, just section by section. And then that's why I was like, well, why not a continuous line drawing? Because that's going to be pretty quick, so I wouldn't have to worry as much about the paint drying. And I also wanted to experiment with just like inks, because you can make so many fun inks at home too, and see like kind of what that would do as well. So especially if you're going to do like an Andy Warhol theme, because he uses inks originally as well. So
yeah, there's so many tricks and tips and techniques that are involved just with the whole register. And I loved all your hacks, the plastic bag, hey, Ollie, that is Tasha's little boy, and clearly the artist or the model that was in the pictures, the clean and messy water, like that was new to me. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that before, so I thought that was awesome. Oh my gosh, Tasha, the book. I missed writing down the name of the book and couldn't get it down fast enough. And so it is called
How to Be an Artist with Jerry Saltz. And Jerry is a art critic. So he has a very interesting perspective. As personally, like for me as a personal artist, it was like just really encouraging to read. I was like, oh, I need to give this to so many people, but then I'm like, I need to reread it like 5 times. So I don't want to give this away yet. So I'm just like, I'm gonna have to buy like 5 copies of it. So, but lots of really cool exercises. SALTZ.
I'm putting it in the comments right now.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So I actually, my friend who is an art teacher, we have a book club together. Her name's Sam Flash, and she teaches down the road in Black River or in Chippewa Falls. So we just finished this book for our book club, and then met last Thursday night and tried out one of the exercises from here together as we kind of talked about different things in the book. But there's just so many things he says in there that you're like, thank you. Like I needed to hear that as an artist, as a person, as a creator. So I highly recommend it.
I'm excited. I am going to check it out myself. All of these webinars that we have been doing in the month of May, the art series Mondays and Wednesdays, but also if you've joined in any of the SEL ones or the science ones, they are all going to be, I like to say they live on Nasco Educate. So Nasco Educate is a K-to-career resource center. And right now through the end of June, you can request an account. You'll get a username and a password, and everything on there is free. And so the recorded webinars, any of them that you have missed, it does take, so like today's, I'm guessing will be on by next week. We have to, it has to get downloaded and then get all that IT stuff. I don't know what they do. They just manage to get it there, but there's a lot of work to be done and it gets on in a few days. So it's in, when you click on the side, it's under webinars in PD, and there'll be current and then previously recorded or past shows. There I go with my show again. Well, I thought I had another question here. I also loved when we just talked about enjoying the mark making, because there is so much true about making marks and just doing art.
Yes. I think it's so easy for kids to get caught up in what their neighbors looks like and what they envision it to look like. And that's a constant struggle for me to just have kids, relax and just enjoy that they've created something from completely nothing. So that, and there's some other really great, interesting things about mark making in that book too. Just about how if you create something and in the end you don't like it, then think about just what was making your hand happy as you were creating. What marks were making you happy? Go back and look at the marks that you enjoyed. And yes. so much good advice in there for us art teachers.
I'm just curious if I find myself being very like I do a lot of spirals. Like spiral kind of is my signature mark. Do artists, like art teachers, do you guys find yourself like having a mark that kind of is your jam, like is your thing?
I feel like for me, I haven't found my mark maybe yet, but I think in high school, I would always go to this tier shape and then kind of create these doodles within that. So I feel like for me, it's more of a shape than a mark. But I think as I'm experimenting more with multiple different mediums and things like that, I'm getting more comfortable with some lines that I'm enjoying more, and kind of observing those lines and like recognizing, oh, I use that here and I'm using it here again, So that's also been really fun. I'll show you really quickly a fun, quick project I created for this other art teacher that just wanted me to come up with something based on my artwork as an artist for her students to do. And I found myself creating a lot of doodles within just shapes. So I had her students outline like something that they really like. So like maybe a truck, and then inside of it, they created all these doodles about themselves. So that was just a really fun, super easy. You could do that at home as well.
Super fun.
Yeah.
I am giggling because, well, first I better ask this question because Brittany's been waiting here patiently. What was the type of ink that you said you could make yourself?
So I just read this and I haven't tried it yet, so don't quote me on this. But I'm going to experiment with it. You just take instant espresso, vinegar, and water and kind of mix that up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then
And
if it doesn't work, drink it and you've got yourself your own Starbucks shot.
And it's like a cleanse because you got the vinegar in there. But I'm sure you could do this.
I'm teasing.
I'm sure you could do something similar too to get some different colors with like a coffee versus espresso and things like that. But really, you can take dandelions, cook them up, get all the color out of them, put that in a jar, put some vinegar in it with some water. You're good to rock and roll.
My mom used to boil up like red onions.
Yep.
When we did Easter eggs, and they were like super purple. So I would imagine that water itself would be like a little purpley watercolor. So those kinds of hacks are very cool, and just kind of, it makes it a science experiment too. Let's be honest. One of the things that I did when Tasha was first telling me about this is I tried, like I said, the acrylic ink on the I was using Duralar. From there, I took the acrylic ink and I put it in a marker dauber, and I just kept making marks on paper. And I may or may not have been doing this during a conference call. I don't want to say I was, because I probably was way too professional for that. But then I just kept setting them aside and setting them aside. And now they've dried, and I've just gone in with Sharpie and created around it, and then used a white gel pen to like embellish. I've been having so much fun doing that too.
I love that.
You go right ahead.
I was just gonna say, I thought of this the other night too with your bingo daubers. I teach 2 adaptive classes each week, and some of my students have trouble gripping things. So if you wanted to do this same technique, you could easily do this with the bingo daubers and then have them print with that as well. And you can also, I've mixed the acrylic paint with some water in those bingo daubers, and it works slick too. So you could also add some color that way as well.
Yep. And liquid watercolor, a little watered down or full strength, either way works out really well. We are seriously just about out of time, and I can't even believe how fast this went, because you are just absolutely delightful, Tasha. And I would strongly recommend everybody check out I Art My Job, both on Instagram and on Facebook. On YouTube, it's just Tasha Newton.
Yep.
It's outstanding how much information's there, and I love you for just being so willing to share it. Give her a shout out when you do it. Tomorrow is Thursday, and we don't normally have a webinar on Thursday, but because we missed Memorial Day, we absolutely want to come back tomorrow with, I don't want to cheat you out of an extra art webinar. So tomorrow, and let's see if I can point the right direction. No, this way. There we go. You know, it's backwards. So I don't know if you can kind of see in the background, there's a weaving back there, and there's a book called Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge. It is beautiful book. It goes with the lesson plan. But if you want to make with us, bring some watercolors, bring just paper that you can watercolor, and then something that you can weave with it, like some construction paper. Quite honestly, you can use a grocery bag. You can also bring a stick and some yarn, even if it's just a pencil or a twig from your garden, or a dowel. We are going to have Art with Coach T. Caitlin Thompson's joining us, and that she is as pretty much as wild and woolly as Tasha is, and that's why I think I'm drawn to all of you guys. You know, I'm almost done here, but I've said it before, and I don't think I've said it at all in this series. art teachers are just like no other. You are so willing to give everything that you have and that you have learned and that you have done in school to somebody else so that that person can be successful. And I honestly can't, I get a little chill when I say it, and I swear that's the truth, because I don't know anybody else who does that. Your servant heart coupled with your creativity is beyond what I can, it just blesses our world and it makes kids better. And I can't thank you enough. So Tasha, thank you again. Ollie, great to see you. Everybody be safe, be well, and keep teaching art.
Thanks, Kris.